Welcome back to our SOAP videos. Glad that you're here. Glad that you're listening. Thank you. We appreciate it. We hope that they're helpful to you as you've been reading the Gospel of Luke. We're in our final week.
We are.
We have come to the end.
Right. 17, right? 17 weeks
17 weeks.
Well, this is the 17th.
That's pretty good to do 24 chapters in 17 weeks.
It is. I'm very proud of you.
The other way around.
Keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Well, we stopped last week with the our reading last week was with the criminals on the cross next to Jesus, and Jesus said to the one, "Today you'll be with me in paradise," and we ended it there.
Right.
So today we pick up.
Right. We got to pick up with his death.
Yeah, Friday noon.
Right.
Friday noon.
Right. So there's really three things. There's his death, his burial, and then the resurrection. And I'm taking the resurrection to be up until till the end of it. So there's some really cool things. I mean, things that obviously we know about or we should have read about, but things that kind of stood out to me. At noon, a darkness came over the land for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
I know historians have gone back and tried to do eclipses, right, to narrow down. Give me a date when this happened. The temple curtain was torn, right, from top to bottom. Yeah, I got to write that down.
Yeah, top to bottom.
Top to bottom.
Nobody can reach that, right? It's
right.
thick, it's heavy.
Right. So was it an earthquake? What happened during that time? Jesus breathes his last in there. That always gets to me. Yeah. Where he has his last breath, and then interesting in Luke. There's a centurion that praises God and proclaims his innocence. Mm-hmm. And you brought up last week, hey, we got two other guys on the cross, both saying, we deserve it, but he doesn't. Yeah. And now we have a centurion saying, man, the dude was innocent. Yeah. And then we have the people that were present there, the Jews that were present there, beating themselves, almost like a pious thing, saying, yeah, I don't think we did good today. Yeah. Type of deal.
Yeah, it was a very dark day.
Right.
Yeah. All those who knew him stood at a distance. They were back. They had scattered.
Right. So that's the death part. Then there's the whole burial thing, right? And we're coming up to the Sabbath, so it needs to be done quickly.
Very quickly.
There seems to be a guy, right, Joseph, who we don't know a whole lot about. Where was he from? Arimathea.
Yeah, Arimathea.
Arimathea.
Yeah. But even Luke doesn't tell us that. We read that from another.
Yeah, I think he is in there.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Where he retrieves the body, he wraps it, he places it in a new tomb. Some women come and see him there, and then the women go to prepare spices. Yeah. Right, and then everybody takes a break because it's the Sabbath.
Yeah,
and
Sunday,
you have to rest.
Not Sunday, but Friday night, 6:00.
Right.
They had to get him off of the cross.
So he died at 3.
Yeah.
So they got 3 hours to do that.
And when you bring the whole thing together, they've got 3 hours. They had the soldiers had to confirm his death.
Right.
Joseph went to Pilate.
He had to go ask for his body.
Right, and get an audience and get the whole thing. And Pilate he's dead already because that never happened. They're better than that. Right?
They can draw it out longer.
Right. He's dead already, so he had to go. Or not him personally, but he had to go make sure that there's confirmation. Yes, he's really dead. Then he had the letters to release him and the whole thing. And then they get back to Calvary and get him down and, just this whole big process. And it's pushing 6:00. And these people need to get home because under the law, you can't touch a dead body.
Right.
They're unclean until sundown. And they don't want to go into the Sabbath unclean. Right. So at 6:00, they become ritually clean again. So they've got to be done touching the dead body, right?
Right.
So they didn't have time to prepare him. They didn't have time to do anything.
Right. So they get him in there, and then from the resurrection standpoint, the women are coming to now anoint him with spices.
Right. Finish the burial process, and he's not there. Exactly.
And then the stones rolled away. I think Luke says that there are 2 men standing there saying, "What are you doing?" Yep. The guy you're looking for is among the living, not the dead.
Among the living. That's awesome phrase.
He's been raised.
Yeah.
They had to freak out.
Yeah.
So the women ran, tell the 11. Peter runs back to the tomb, leaves wondering what's going on because he just saw the ribbons that Jesus was wrapped in.
Yeah.
And, we don't know, are they on the floor? Are they neatly laid?
Yeah. Well, let's not forget, we have about a 36-hour period that we just glossed over.
Yeah, right.
Okay. 6 o'clock Friday to probably 6 p.m. Friday to about 6 a.m. probably Sunday.
Yeah.
They're terrified this whole time.
Right.
They're in grief. They're in shock. They're in terror.
Right. Well, are we next?
Yeah.
Right.
What's going on?
Hiding. Yeah, exactly.
Everything that they'd invested in, time, money, resources, everything was gone. And Rome had done it as far as they could tell.
Right. So then, towards the end of this week, we're going to read, the rest of the story where Jesus makes some appearances, and we kind of talked that it looked like he appeared to at least 5 people.
Yeah.
Before the masses. But Luke puts in a story about the road to Emmaus.
Yeah.
On there, and then we have Jesus's final appearance, and then we have the Great Commission too, which isn't necessarily watered down. But it's in there, and again, it's the reason we've been telling everybody we need to read all the versions because Luke's doesn't have as much detail as like Matthew's does.
Right. Yeah.
At least in that section right there.
Yeah. Matthew and Mark and Luke and John and Acts actually all have sort of what I'll call a piece of the commission. Just this big. You have to bring them together to see the whole thing.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
So what'd you pick up on?
Well, there's a ton.
Yeah,
of,
just a
there's a
couple
ton of little things. Every verse has got
Right.
something that we could. If we just go through these very quickly. Joseph was a member of the council. Okay, so the council had voted, but it wasn't unanimous. Right? Yeah, it was not unanimous.
Well, I thought it was unanimous.
Well, it couldn't have been because Joseph was a member and he had not consented to their plan.
Right, but that could mean one of two things. Either he voted yes to death and then repented later, or he was in prison. I mean, there's enough of them. There's no way that they could have been around for every vote. I mean, it's not like cell phones today where hey, we got an emergency vote type of thing.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible, but I mean, he was there just a couple hours later.
Yeah,
they all probably lived in or around Jerusalem.
Yeah,
we assume Nicodemus, if he was still on the he was still on the council, he probably wasn't with it.
Yeah.
So so we've got that. Just the end of the last phrase of chapter 23. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. 36 hours, 24 to 36 hours in those handful of words.
Yeah, tick.
Yeah.
Not knowing if his body's going to be stolen.
Right.
I don't know if they would have thought of that. Right. That was more of a Roman thing to place the guard so it wouldn't be stolen.
Yeah, but who knows what could have happened. Right. So you mentioned five appearances, at least 5 appearances on Resurrection Day, right? So there is the women come to the tomb, they see the angels, they go running back. Matthew tells us that Jesus meets them and says, "Go tell the apostles." Of course, Mary in the garden, Mary Magdalene in the garden. And then here we find out, and in 1 Corinthians 15, we find out that Peter had a special appearance just for him. Right. At some point between chapter 24, verse 12, and verse 34. At some point in there.
So in 12 is where Peter runs to the tomb and sees that Jesus isn't there.
Right, and he goes home wondering what happened.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get to verse 34, we find out, yes, he appeared to Simon as well.
Yeah, so somewhere.
So we've got that one in there. And now we've got these 2 people on the road to Emmaus. And then we also have the 11, plus those who were gathered there with him later on that evening.
Right.
So at least 5. And we don't even know if that's all.
Right. So the 2 that were in Emmaus, we would call them disciples, but not apostles.
Yeah, they weren't part of the 11, but they were part of the overall group.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's interesting that so they're walking home. Basically, it says it's 7 miles from Jerusalem, and Jesus sort of walks up alongside them. Hey, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah. How can you not know?
Yeah, are you the only person in Jerusalem who doesn't know these things? And what things? And they said, concerning Jesus the Nazarene, a man who, with his powerful deeds and words, proved to be a prophet before God and all the people. And every time I read that, I'm like, it would have hurt you to say the Messiah?
Right. Right. Well, I wonder if they couldn't have considered him the Messiah because at that point he was dead.
Dead.
And the Messiah wouldn't have been dead.
Well, and apparently
Their
these two
Messiah.
hadn't seen or heard any of the appearances yet, right? They hadn't heard about the resurrection.
Right.
Only a few had at this point. And then a couple of verses down, verse 21, and we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. Not only this, but now it's the third day since these things have happened. Oh no, actually that's not true. Further, some women of our group amazed us. I forgot about this. Some women of our group amazed us. They said they didn't find his body and they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. So they had heard, but they hadn't. Right. So we have these disciples here who can't even bring themselves to use the word Messiah. He was a prophet, and we hoped that he was going to do this, but now what are we going to do, right? So there's that. I love, one of the questions that comes up all the time is what are our bodies going to be like after death? What is it going to be like in heaven? What's it,
Since he wasn't recognizable.
Either because he's not recognizable, or eventually they did recognize him, right? It specifically says that they were kept from seeing and recognizing him right away. When he popped in a few verses later, everybody recognized him.
Right.
He had to say, "Don't be afraid," but everybody recognized him. Peace be with you. But he ate.
Right.
He ate food twice in this passage with the people in Emmaus. And then when he popped in with the apostles and everything, they're like, "It's a ghost." He's like, "Can a ghost do this?" It sort of reminds me of the genie on Aladdin, right? Can your friend do this? And he's like, "Can a ghost do this?" And give me something to eat. So they found some broiled fish and they gave it to him, and he ate it. And they're like, "Oh, it can't be a ghost."
Right. So did angels ever eat anything?
Yeah.
Right. Because I was thinking back to Abraham, right?
Yeah.
He made food for them.
Yeah. So this concept of a spiritual body that's going to be so, whatever. No, we're going to have bodies, He could be touched, right? He could touch things and be touched and eat and, and consume food. And so I think all of that's going to be, whether do we need food?
I think we would be the same way, right?
Yeah.
If all of a sudden somebody appeared to us, a loved one who had died appeared to us, we would think it would be a vision or something, and then to have them, to be able to touch them and have them eat.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I saw you die.
Yeah, they've got to be in shock. There's no doubt they've got to be in shock. The final thing, just as far as just the things that I like in this particular he ate broiled fish. I like broiled fish. Whatever. But then he says in verse 44, "These are my words." Yeah. Could I have that a little "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled."
I love that.
I love that from a couple of different. Of course, obviously, it's there, and he opened their minds so that they could understand the scriptures. But from a Bible survey, when I teach hermeneutics or Bible survey or whatever, the apocryphal books had already been written by this time. Okay, they were part of the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Jesus had access to it. The apostles had access. They knew it was there, But this collection of the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms,
we chose not to include it,
were the three sections of the Hebrew Bible that did not include those other books. Those are the ones that are canon. That's what's Scripture. And the fact that Luke said that he referred to all three of them, I think is really cool, because it helps us as we're, what's in the Bible? Well, according to Jesus, there were all of these other things out there, and this is what he authorized.
Well, and it's also that he fulfilled everything that was said about him in the past too, which is really hard to do.
At least up to that point, there's still a ton of prophecy left.
Definitely.
But everything written about me must be fulfilled, and he starts listing out And he spends the next 40 days, according to Acts chapter 1. And let's not forget that Luke 24 is the end of volume 1, and Acts 1 is the beginning of volume 2, right?
Right.
And so he spends the next 40 days teaching them, talking with them, many, many appearances that we just don't know.
Right.
So just a few things that always catch my attention, or in things that I like.
Yeah, I had a couple things. I tried to take a different route versus, a verse. Tried to take a step back and since we're at the end of Luke, what, as an overall, as a 50,000 big picture look, what are we looking at? And, when we go back and think about these from very early on, I don't even know what week it was, we said Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. And he went, and it took him forever to get there. 20 chapters, well, however long it took him to get there, so many chapters. And he was only there for a week. And it was 3, 4, 5 chapters in there, but it seemed like he spent the vast majority of his last 3 years trying to get to Jerusalem. And I thought it was really interesting is after his resurrection, the first thing is he leaves Jerusalem. He goes back, but he leaves it, and there's 2 guys that are going to Emmaus. And we don't really know why. Are they leaving town because the heat's on and they're scared and they're getting out of there, or are they going there to start to prophesize or share the gospel? Although the Great Commission hasn't been given yet.
Right.
Certainly, Jesus was having people go out and teach, and were they going to continue with that?
Yeah,
and they were talking to him about. They were willing to talk to him about. We would say biblical things.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was kind of interesting. So it's kind of I'm not quite sure what was going on there. With that. And then the second thing is, and you brought it up in verse 45. This was right around the time when he was given the Great Commission. Then he opened their minds so they could understand the Scripture.
Yep.
And we saw all throughout Luke where the disciples didn't get it, they didn't understand, where things were purposefully, not necessarily withheld, but the understanding was withheld. And now it's not. So now they can see the complete picture. Now they can put everything together. And I get it. Some things you're with Jesus, but you're not ready for that yet. But now with them having to carry the message forward, they need the complete message. And so he unpacks it all again. And it's really cool. He says in verse 47, or verse 48 rather, you are witnesses of these things. And then just a few verses later, which we don't have very many here, but you have to go into Acts 1. He says, at the beginning of the 40 days, you are witnesses of these things. At the end of the 40 days, but just before he ascends, he says, you will be my witnesses. Different time. Isn't that a neat connection? Yeah, that is. So I think it comes down to everybody that's listening. What do you believe? Where are you in your life, and what are you going to carry forward for the next generation? We may not have been witnesses of these things, but we are still witnesses of the truth of these things. These things did happen, right? Yeah. Well, thank you for spending some time with us in the Gospel of Luke. 17 weeks. 17 weeks. A few minutes at a time, and some longer minutes than others, but a few minutes at a time in the Gospel of Luke. I hope it's been beneficial to you. We really enjoy putting these together, and we hope that they have helped you read better, helped you study better. We'd love to hear what you have gotten out of it, the things that you like about this. And next week, I was going to say, speaking of that, we should plug next week. Next week we're going to start in Isaiah chapter 40 through 66. And some really, really cool stuff in here, and some well-known passages, and of course some not quite as well-known passages. But we'll read most of it. We're not going to read the whole thing, but we will read most of Isaiah 40 to 66. And so make sure that you pick up your S.O.A.P card. You can find it online at oaktreechurch.com/SOAP. You can get a card here at the church.
We can mail it to you if you need to. That's fine. Make sure that you have one, and we will be working on it. We will be back next week. See you then.